So I want to spend some time chatting about something that's pretty controversial, so we're going to tiptoe towards it. But long story short, I was doing some research for the show, looking through the Akron Beacon Journal, and there was an editorial that caught my eye because it had to do with the death penalty and execution. Mm-hmm. And as I was reading it, I realized that it was written because it's very possible that a brand new kind of execution could be coming to Ohio. There is a number of state-level leaders that are actually in favor of and advocating for this brand new form of execution. Now, we're going to be talking about execution and death penalty, so you make the decisions in your lives if you don't want your little ones listening to it. But let's go through this a little bit. I need to tiptoe towards it, all right? Because people get fired up about this. In fact, if I just said death penalty, without thinking, most people are for or against.
Right, something comes to mind.
And sometimes those positions are come to without a ton of digging. Just a little digging. Like my favorite pastor says he's for it, so I'm for it. I read a passage that says it's good, so I like it. Or I heard a guy say it's bad, so I don't like it. So we're going to just tiptoe here. So first of all, it's a non-salvific issue. There's no reason for anyone to go apoplectic here or lose their mind or yell at anybody in their house or themselves or Ron, like that would happen, because this is not something that saves you. Your position on the death penalty is not something that saves you. It's not even a secondary issue, I don't think. Where would you put this? Like a third tier? You talked about the 3 tiers yesterday.
Yeah, dogma, doctrine, and opinion. I would say it's an opinion. It's not doctrine.
Right.
Now, it's an important thing in our society today, but it certainly isn't something that Christians need to divide over. Okay. I learned a bunch of new things that I'm going to share with you as we tiptoe towards this new form of execution. Because you can't just get to the thing before you talk about the broader concept. Did you know there's actually 3 Christian positions about the death penalty?
No.
I did not.
I was surprised to learn that. I went to what other source but Prison Fellowship, founded by Chuck Colson many years ago. After serving time in prison, he realizes changes need to come. There's 3 Christian positions on the death penalty. Now, I'm going to give you just a very basic 3, and we can get into as deep as you guys would like. But position 1, someone who would say that Scripture mandates capital punishment. Like it must happen. Position 2, Scripture prohibits capital punishment. Like you shouldn't do it. Position 3, Scripture permits capital punishment. Like it's allowed but not required.
Okay.
Or it's allowed in a very specific narrow circumstance. I always thought it was just like for or against. How do we feel about these 3 positions in general?
I think that's accurate.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting for those who are in the mandate category, they obviously look at the law, the Levitical law, and I always forget at how many things were capital punishment worthy in the Old Testament. Because a lot of people like to cite that, right? It's like, I'm for the death penalty because it was in the Old Testament. God said it, it was part of the law. Mm-hmm. So here are some execution-level offenses in the Bible. Murder. Not accidental killings, by the way. Murder. Striking or cursing a parent. Kidnapping. Adultery. Rape. Witchcraft. Incorrigible delinquency.
What does that even mean?
I don't know. Breaking the Sabbath. Blasphemy. Sacrificing to false gods. Oppressing the weak. All those things. You could literally, for cursing your parent, be put to death. So if somebody subscribes to the mandated one, you're going to have to grapple with not just the capital punishment for murder, but with the, saying something mean to your mom.
I think we should all be dead.
Amen.
For being honest.
But isn't that part of the point that Jesus gave to us in the New Testament?
Right.
He clarified, no, you're all lawbreakers. Hello. If you just hate your brother in your heart, you committed murder. The prohibits one talks a lot about, for example, one of the arguments in there is that Christ's death on the cross ended the requirement for blood recompense and blood sacrifice. The sacrifice of Jesus, the Lamb of God, they write, replaced the sacrifice of animals. His death also made it unnecessary to execute murderers to maintain human dignity and value, because the crucifixion forever established human value. Like, you don't have to do this anymore. Okay? And then permits, you can imagine where that would go. And actually, no, there's one unexpected thing. For those who are in the permit category in the death penalty, it says here, perhaps the most compelling arguments against capital punishment in this category are examples of capital criminals who were not executed, such as Cain, Moses, David, the woman caught in adultery that Jesus gave a pass to, essentially. Not a pass, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there were situations in the New Testament and throughout the entire Bible where people committed a capital crime but were not executed. Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
So that's in the permits category. Like, I don't know if it's every time, though. Okay. Now, what I also want to do here before we get into the new form of execution is there's a number of different ways to pick this up and look at it. There's an intellectual analysis we have to do of capital punishment and what it is. Like, it's not nice, but there's more practical, pragmatic discussions to have when one is making their decision on capital punishment. And there's other ethical things to consider. There's a brand new form of execution in America that has actually been used. And there are Ohio lawmakers who'd like to bring it here. And I don't know about you, but I feel like issues of life and death impact Christian morality and thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to talk about it. Now, we're tiptoeing towards the death penalty if you're just tuning in. It is not a salvific issue. Christians can and probably should disagree on this in some respects as we grapple with the difficult issue. We've looked at the three Christian perspectives on it, but also I think God gave us a brain. We have to think intellectually about this as well in the world in which we live.
Mm-hmm.
So the Lord has placed us in America at this time. So in order to have an intellectual discussion, because remember, we have to honor government authority as well as part of the Christian life.
Right.
Let's look at the Constitution itself. The Bill of Rights includes information about execution, kind of. Now, Ron wishes we would stop at the Third Amendment, which is his very favorite. You know, no soldier shall in a time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Haven't heard a good debate on that in a while. But nonetheless, okay, we've all heard of somebody pleading the Fifth, the Sixth Amendment,
Mm-hmm.
speedy trial guarantee and an impartial jury.
Yeah, that speedy trial.
We got to work on that.
Right. It's been a couple hundred years since anybody's had a speedy trial in America, I think.
And then you have the Seventh Amendment, which is the right to trial by jury.
Mm-hmm.
But I think execution, no question, as Americans, we'd have to confront the Eighth Amendment. Now, yes, I had to look it up because no one talks about this
Okay.
unless you're a lawyer. Did anyone in the room know that? Do you know it before I bring it up?
No.
Okay. Here's what it is. Quote, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted.
Mm. Yeah, I hear the cruel and unusual bandied about quite a bit.
We talk about that, but okay, so if we're subject to government authority, Romans 13, 2 Peter, whatever, in some sense, we are also subject to the idea that the laws of the land indicate, if you set even your morality aside, cruel and unusual punishment shouldn't be inflicted in America.
Mm-hmm.
And so intellectually, don't we have to grapple with what that means?
Right. And at the time it was written, the late 1700s, what was that versus today? We live a very cushy life, so cruel and unusual might be very different from what the founding fathers had in their mind.
Yeah, and I mean, you might be like, well, what do you mean cruel and unusual punishment? Well, we live in a modern world, for goodness sakes. I don't think drawing and quartering people in the Middle Ages just kind of hurt a little.
No.
You would die.
Yes, painfully.
Crucifixion, hello?
Mm-hmm.
That's cruel and unusual.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been since the Enlightenment, it's been a journey to try to figure out how can you execute someone in a way that's not cruel and unusual? We have to ask the question because it's a thing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if you're going to be really crude in this, and forgive me if you're one of our friends who listens from prison, But there is an economic, pragmatic aspect to execution that has to be discussed as one thinks about the death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
Because I found out something that I had no idea was the case. Like, you'd have to ask yourself, all right, well, I don't know what to think about the death penalty, but bottom line, you want to save the taxpayers money, it's got to be excessively expensive, comparatively speaking, to put someone in prison for the rest of their lives.
True.
So we're actually, in a cold and cruel way, saying, well, it's cheaper. It's better for the taxpayer and for the country if you take somebody who's like a serial killer and you just end them.
But there's also the thought that if a person knows they commit a murder, they in turn themselves will be killed. They're less likely to commit the murder, theoretically.
Theoretically, yeah. Turns out that presupposition I had about it being like way cheaper to execute somebody is totally wrong. Now, again, I don't like this analysis, but we'd all be liars if we said it didn't come into play, even when Christians talk about this. Because, again, if you can't decide on the death penalty, you might just go, well, if it's cheaper, that's better for society. I looked at 3 different sources to verify that this was actually the case because it was hard for me to believe. One source said it's 10 times cheaper to imprison someone for life than it is to execute them. Another source said that it's unquestionably cheaper for taxpayers to put someone in prison for life without parole. And another, a fact-check website, actually gave a dollar amount from a specific study. A preliminary study by South Dakotans for alternatives to the death penalty examined first-degree murder cases since 1985 that have resulted in a death sentence or life in prison and found the average legal costs in death penalty cases exceeded those of other cases by $350,105.
Cases, meaning the legal...
Yeah, so you might be saying, how could it possibly be more expensive? Because of all the because of the constitutional rights people have who are sentenced to death for appeals.
And they'll probably sit on death row for 10, 20 years while they go through the courts because they don't want to put an innocent person to death.
Exactly. So you've got the excessive legal costs because remember, if you're a defendant, you're guaranteed counsel. So unless you feel like paying for a lawyer, who pays for the lawyer?
The state.
For 20 years when they punch the clock. Pretrial costs, jury selection, the cost of the jury to be away from their jobs, the trial itself, incarceration, appeals, all those processes, unquestionably, do the research yourself if you don't believe me. It's way cheaper to put someone in prison for life than it is to execute them. So now this is getting even harder, in my opinion.
So while they're in prison, not pending death penalty, but in prison for life
without parole,
then they still have the same incarceration costs, but there's not like the appeals and all that going on at the state's expense. It's just
correct.
3 squares and
3 hots and a cot, I think they say. I'm sorry, guys, and our friends in prison. I'm clearly not knowing what I'm talking about, but you've heard that one at least. I couldn't believe that one. That one threw me off. And then, I don't know if you realize this, people have been grappling with death penalty and the ethics of it for a super long time. When I was in my undergrad, I did a paper, this sounds great, on the guillotine. Did you know the guy, it's named after a guy with that last name, Guillotine. And he was horrified that his name was used for the invention. You might be like, whoa, wait, what? He invented it. Well, he was against the death penalty, but during the Enlightenment and the French Revolution, they were grappling with, well, you know, we're enlightened people. We can't torture someone anymore. We've got to come up with a way to execute people in an ethical way that doesn't like cause pain and torture. And so in order to like help promote that cause, he's like, well, I invented this thing. How do you like that? Maybe that'll help. And people were like, great idea. We'll name it after you. His family had tried until, like, for many years until the 19th century to get them to change it, and they wouldn't.
Because it was used as capital punishment in France till what, the 70s?
That's the other horrifying thing. Yes, France used the guillotine up until the 1970s.
Wow.
Now, The reason this became controversial was because scientists, they were ordered to stop after a while, but there was debate about how long consciousness continues.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just tell you, there's inconclusive evidence. It's not definitive. Talk about torture.
Yeah, could be.
So all that to say, there's other aspects for Christians to consider as we get towards this new form of execution. That all this layers on top of it as you form your position. See, nuance is needed in life so much. Did you know that 196 people have been exonerated and released from death row since 1973? So in America, we've had 196 people who were convicted and sentenced to death who actually didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so as my wife asked me once, what is more unjust than executing an innocent person? So as we as Christians must grapple with the existence of execution, what do we do with the fact that since 1973, 196 people have been exonerated and released from death row, as in there's got to be more? Oh no, what if we execute someone who's innocent?
There have been those cases where people have been exonerated post-execution.
Of course.
Mm.
Many. Uh-oh. That's a problem. And then here's this one. Even like, what do we do as Christians with the accusation of hypocrisy? Like, I know people can legitimately hold two things in tension, but as we as followers of Jesus really are talking a lot about abortion these days, couldn't someone look at us and go, oh, wait, I thought you were pro-life?
Yeah, there's that accusation. You're not actually pro-life, you're just pro-birth. And you don't care what happens to anybody after that.
Like, couldn't someone? Now, I'm not saying there isn't a way to get out of the box, but put you in a box and say, if you adamantly believe in the preservation of human life in the womb, why wouldn't you adamantly believe in the preservation of human life even in jail?
Especially the possibility of innocent life.
Correct. It's a tough one, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And not that, again, I know somebody's yelling at their radio saying, Brian, but X, Y, and Z, and you can get it. I'm sure that's the case. But it's not too far out of the realm of discussion to presume that somebody could make a fairly decent argument against it, right? Say, if you are pro-life in this area, you really ought to be in another. Because who's to say, they would go, that this life you saved in the womb wouldn't become a serial killer that's sentenced to death?
It's possible.
All right, so with that in mind, take all of that. It's a lot. Coming up here in just a minute, what we're going to do is talk about specifically what could be coming. I wouldn't be surprised if it came to Ohio. A new type of execution. What is it? What do we think about it? How do we handle this? We'll get to it in just a few minutes. If you're just tuning in, we've talked about the death penalty and how it's not an issue that saves you. It's not an issue that should divide Christians in like an angry way. It's one that should cause us to have robust, healthy discussions.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's really complicated. We spend a lot of time talking about how complicated it is intellectually, ethically, biblically, all those things. But now let's get to the actual situation at hand. And it has to do with the trial and execution of a man named Kenneth Smith. Kenneth Smith, age 58, was one of three men convicted in the stabbing murder of Elizabeth Dorleen Sennett, age 45, whose husband, a pastor, had recruited them to kill her in March 1998 in Colbert County, Alabama. According to court documents, Miss Sennett, a mother of two, was stabbed a whole bunch of times in the attack by Mr. Smith and another man. Charles Sennett Sr., her husband, had recruited a man to handle her killing, who in turn hired Mr. Smith and another man. Basically, the guy, the pastor, had promised to pay them all $1,000 each after he collected the life insurance. He was in dire straits financially, and this was his solution. Mr. Smith was convicted in 1996. I mean, he did it. Okay? At the sentencing, 11 of the 12 jurors voted to spare his life and sentence him to life in prison. But the judge in the case decided to overrule their decision and condemned him to death.
Interesting.
I was like, what? 11 of 12 jurors said life in prison. Judge goes, nah, I don't like that. Death.
It's interesting that they have the authority to do that.
Interesting you point that out. In 2017, Alabama stopped allowing judges to overrule death penalty juries in such a way, and such rulings are no longer allowed anywhere in America. Anywhere. You're like, well, why would he be on death row still? / be dead today. He was executed just a few days ago. Well, in a statement, Governor Kay Ivey of Alabama has previously said that while Alabama has made a necessary change to ban judges from overruling jurors' recommendations, lawmakers had chosen not to make the law retroactive.
Okay.
So he stayed on death row, even though all of America thinks it's not just to have a judge overturn a jury's decision because he wasn't grandfathered in. And it gets worse. In November 2022, the state tried to execute Kenneth Eugene Smith. And I didn't read that wrong. Using lethal injection. But that night, a team of correctional facility workers tried and repeatedly failed to insert an intravenous line into Mr. Smith's arms and hands, and eventually a vein near his heart. Finally, after multiple attempts, prison officials decided they did not have the time to carry out the execution before the death warrant expired at midnight. And he was sent back to his cell. Whoa.
Because it's not unusual for people to have bad veins. You know, talk to the Red Cross. There's always people who come in, would love to give blood, but they're just dehydrated or low blood pressure, whatever, and they can't stick the vein.
And remember, medical professionals do not perform these executions because they're barred from doing so.
Okay.
By their professional organizations. And even, by the way, I don't know if you know this, Ohio has stalled our death penalty, our executions, because across the country, drug companies refuse to allow them to use the drugs they use for lethal injection to kill someone, because they're the very same drugs used to make sure you're sleeping soundly while surgery is performed. And that's not how they're designed, and they refuse to let them be used for that.
Okay.
So now Alabama's in a tough place. They were. They're like, we got to kill this guy, and we can't.
Yeah.
With the only method left for us.
Because they don't do firing squads or, you know, the physical killing anymore. They've tried to be humane with drugs, and it's not working.
And so this is where I started getting to the Akron Beacon Journal, because their solution to this problem of a man who he did kill someone, a jury said let him live, a judge changed his mind, America said, wait, you can't do that. Oh, didn't grandfather him in, so he still has to be executed. Mm-hmm. They try to execute him, it didn't work. Alabama comes up with a new idea. Here's what Akron Beacon Journal wrote. The state of Alabama executed convicted killer Kenneth Eugene Smith on Thursday last week in a first-of-its-kind execution using nitrogen gas to asphyxiate the inmate. Smith, 58 years old, was the first person in the U.S. and likely the world to be put to death by nitrogen hypoxia after a drawn-out legal battle over Alabama's methods of execution. He was pronounced dead at 8:25 p.m. at a southern Alabama prison after breathing nitrogen gas through a full face mask, according to officials. Now, again, we're going to keep talking about this. I have to tell you this next part about how it went, because that weighs on our talking ethically. Make your own decisions with those listening. The execution took 22 minutes. Smith appeared to convulse and shake vigorously for about 4 minutes after the nitrogen gas apparently began flowing through his mask. It was another 2 to 3 minutes before he appeared to lose consciousness, all while gasping for air to the extent that the gurney shook several times.
Because, in effect, you're drowning him, but instead of water, you're filling his lungs with nitrogen.
Correct.
Instead of life-giving oxygen.
Now, you might be like, again, Ohio? This is Alabama. Why are you talking about it? There's a editorial in the Akron Beacon Journal just over the weekend that reminds us Ohio's death row has 117 men and 1 woman on it waiting to be executed here in our state. And I won't say the specific names, but leading state lawmakers are championing Alabama's new execution method as an option for Ohio, the administration of readily available nitrogen in lieu of lethal injections of hard-to-obtain drugs. So state lawmakers are saying, we got a backlog of people we got to kill. Alabama just did it. Why don't we use nitrogen gas? That's not hard to get. Enter real moral, ethical dilemma for followers of Jesus. Right? I mean, we vote.
Mm-hmm.
State lawmakers, some of them are Christians. Okay. Now, I wrote to a friend who will be anonymous, but I can tell you he is a board-certified anesthesiologist to get his opinion on nitrogen asphyxiation.
Okay.
But I just kind of want to let it breathe for a minute here. That's a terrible analogy. Sorry. Didn't mean to do that.
Oh, wow.
Really didn't mean to do that. Thoughts? What do we do with this? Whether or not you're for or against death penalty.
If I were intentionally wanting to kill someone in as least painful, least cruel way, I would want to put them to sleep somehow before you do the hypoxia, the nitrogen to them.
Yeah, I'm also wondering why they didn't give him anesthesia or something first.
But if that's what the drug companies are saying, no,
they can't get the drug.
I know it would be helpful to you, but I'm not going to give it to you.
Exactly
because
right.
I don't want you using our drug.
And anesthesiologists adamantly refuse to administer the drug for that purpose.
Because then people wouldn't want to use that during surgeries and stuff if you're using it for the death penalty.
Right. When we're ready for it, I'll read my note. I have
Yeah.
permission from this anesthesiologist to share with you his response to this.
I'm no drug expert. Haven't been down to the street corner trying to strike a deal, but it seems like we regularly gather fentanyl and other drugs off the street. I don't know, do you need to inject them? Is there a way to take them orally? And could that not put someone into the relaxed, out-of-body kind of experience where then nitrogen hypoxia, they wouldn't feel the pain because they're already...
I think I can give you the answer to that.
Okay.
States can't buy it off the street. They have to buy it from a drug company. A drug company would never sell you fentanyl for execution.
So your police stashes can't be used by the prison department. They have to burn them or whatever they do.
I don't know. I mean, you're starting to get some creative thinking here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the task at hand would be, it's so hard for states to get drugs to do this. They can't use drugs.
I honestly think we need to shift some of the blame to the drug companies for not selling to states what we know to be one of the most humane ways to execute someone. Like, never mind whether we agree with the death penalty, people are going to do it. People are going to get executed. And I think the drug companies share some blame for this problem because they've had to find creative, less humane solutions because they can't get what they need.
Meanwhile, state lawmakers would say, that's fine and good. That'll take decades to solve that problem. We got lots of nitrogen gas. All in favor?
It just seems like it's going from 0 to 10, and you need that 5 step in the middle that you ease them out of consciousness.
And what's incredible, of course, is that there are plenty of people who are strong advocates of the death penalty who've been trying to figure this out for years. They've got a backlog of 117 men and 1 woman here in Ohio, and they'd like to do away with them. Give them the punishment that they feel the state rendered for their crime. And they can't figure out another way to do it.
Yeah, I know the electric chair has been shown to have problems.
Cruel and unusual. Yep.
Firing squads. You got 10 people.
Nobody wants to take the shot.
Yeah.
And sometimes they miss.
But 10, you should really shatter the heart with, 5 of you even hit of your sharpshooters.
I mean, the problem with the death by firing squad is there's a lot of times it's not instant. It takes time. Unlike what they show in the movies, if a bullet hits you, it will take time to bleed out.
You haven't said much, Lauren.
It makes me uncomfortable.
Specifically this type of
Yeah.
execution?
Mhm.
Why?
Because the person is still conscious for so long, and you're letting them suffer and be tortured.
Well, he shouldn't have stabbed that lady.
Agreed. I'm not saying he should have, but I don't think that this is the answer to the problem.
What's the prime, and as we all share, it seems like, you two haven't said it yet, Daria and Ron, but it seems like you're uncomfortable with nitrogen gas asphyxiation.
I don't mind that per se. I just think before you drown him in nitrogen, you need to put him to sleep, you know?
My humanness is like, how bad can I feel for someone who did something so horrible and took another person's life? At the same time, I know that I have been shown grace through Jesus' death, and I also don't want anyone to suffer in the way I know this man probably did.
Yeah. See, this is why the nuance of the Christian life is so hard, isn't it? I mean, you're right. This guy was a hitman, and he murdered somebody's wife for hire. I mean, goodness sakes, it's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, the Pharisees went up to Jesus and were like, listen, I follow the law. I haven't killed anybody. He's like, oh, yeah? You ever hated your brother in your heart? Same as murder. Like, the message of the gospel is that we are all murderers. We are all adulterers. Not, our righteous deeds are filthy rags. None of us is good. No, not one. And so we must come to ethical terms as Christians with the fact that this guy that was executed with nitrogen gas could have easily been our brother in Christ. I don't know. I haven't researched his faith. But you see, it's a much more complicated thing.
Mm-hmm.
Something I really struggle with the death penalty is, what if we're robbing someone's chance to come to Jesus because we as humans have decided to cut their life short?
Yeah. Add to that, what if they're actually innocent?
Mm-hmm.
Because we've, again, had all those exonerations across the country since the 1970s. Add to that, what if it's a situation where a judge did something they shouldn't do and we all agree they shouldn't do, and because of a technicality, he still is going to get executed? I mean, there's so many layers of this that I don't know how somebody could just callously walk up to the story and go, just do away with him. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, goodness sakes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think it's worth sharing here in just a minute. I got his permission, a buddy of mine, I won't say where he's from, but I will tell you he's an anesthesiologist. There's lots of those in America, so you'll never know who it was. I sent him the article on nitrogen gas asphyxiation, and I asked him what do you think of this? Because we're not doctors. Do I really know what nitrogen gas does? No. What did he say? We'll get to his answer in just a minute. We're talking about a new form of execution in America. Alabama became the first state to use nitrogen gas asphyxiation. And Ohio lawmakers, some of them, want to bring it here because we have a backlog of prisoners sentenced to death in this state. If you're just tuning in, you missed a whole lot of intellectual, moral, and biblical discussion about the death penalty and how complex it is and how it's not an issue that saves you. So you shouldn't yell at us or each other about it.
Go watch back on the live stream.
Right. Yeah, you can watch it. Exactly.
Already archived.
Now, since I'm not a doctor, I was like, I wish I knew one. Oh, wait, I do. So I know a guy who's an anesthesiologist somewhere in America. And I sent him the article from the Akron Beacon Journal about nitrogen gas asphyxiation and the execution of this particular prisoner. And I said, no pressure, but I'd be really curious to know your thoughts on this. And he sent me a response and then later gave me permission to share it with you. Here's what he wrote. Hey, Brian, great question. Because I asked, what do you make of this? He said, I've also heard about this story, and as you might imagine, I do have an opinion. First thing to determine is the goal of capital punishment. Is the goal to kill the prisoner or to torture and then ultimately kill them? If you look back at some of the different ways this has been done historically, you can see the difference. Examples of a quick death without torture are lethal injection, done correctly, and firing squad. Examples of tortured death are crucifixion, hanging, electric chair, and in my opinion, asphyxiation with nitrogen gas. I'm no expert on capital punishment, but I do think I understand some of the pitfalls. Regarding the failures of lethal injection, I see the following issues. First, the National Physician Societies of specialties that are experts in sedation and anesthesia forbid their members from participating in capital punishment. Second, the manufacturers of the drugs that would work best forbid their drugs from being used for that purpose. Understandably, it would be hard to convince a layperson that the same drug used to kill prisoners is perfectly safe for your surgery or procedure. It's a tough sell. So these states are left with people who aren't the best trained and drugs that aren't the best suited for the job.
Right.
You have guards, essentially, administering lethal doses of medication. He said, no wonder we see so many botched attempts.
That's why they can't find a vein.
Yeah.
They're not trained.
That's why his first execution was botched. Yeah. Now he goes into detail about nitrogen gas asphyxiation. Nitrogen asphyxiation certainly works. Much like carbon monoxide poisoning, nitrogen asphyxiation deprives the body's cells of oxygen, which leads to systemic failure of major organs, the brain, heart, lungs, kidney, liver, etc. The air you breathe normally is about 77 to 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen. I didn't know that.
No, I didn't know either.
Dario's like, you old men.
I didn't say that.
You thought it. Just kidding, you didn't. He said, by delivering 100% nitrogen, the body no longer receives the fuel it needs for basic metabolism. Total oxygen deprivation would likely take 5 to 10 minutes to accomplish cardiac arrest, depending on the underlying health of the prisoner. The prisoner would be awake and coherent for the first couple of minutes. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. The other pitfall is that you risk injury to the others in the room. Depending on the flow of gas and the quality of the mask seal, significant leakage of nitrogen gas could cause hypoxic gas mixture, I'm not a doctor, in the room, causing similar yet non-lethal effects on other participants.
Right. The ambient air in that room would increase in its volume of nitrogen compared to oxygen.
So a guy who I can tell you, I know him as a follower of Jesus and as an anesthesiologist, he wouldn't wish nitrogen gas asphyxiation on his worst enemy because, as he specifically says, you'd have a couple of minutes where you are awake and coherent and oxygenless. He thinks it's cruel and unusual. He's a doctor. He's not a lawyer. Lawyers get to decide that, right? Cruel and unusual.
But
Yeah.
he knows a lot about what the drugs do.
Right. So now what? Like, quite literally, we have state lawmakers wanting to use this form of execution. So not only do followers of Jesus in Ohio have to grapple with what do we think of execution, because if they adopt this, we're going to crank that puppy back up again. It's been on hold. We've been able to ignore it. Again, 117 men and one woman on death row in Ohio right now waiting to be executed.
And we're back to the need to put them to sleep before we kill them.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
that's cruel, but that's in essence what, if you just go straight with nitrogen, like he says, a couple minutes, they're alert, they're awake and feeling the pain. So you have to stop that. But the drug companies won't share their drugs with you for that purpose. So
right.
I don't
not
know,
only
go
do
to
we-
Mexico or China and get the drugs you need from them.
Well, and this is the point we made off the air too. Like, China has no problem executing people because they're a communist society.
Mm-hmm.
Private companies in a capitalist society get to make decisions they want. If you don't like it, I guess go to China. I don't know.
Yeah, buy it on Temu.
Now, so not only in Ohio do we have to actually grapple again with whether or not we support as Christians capital punishment, but now we have a new method we have to decide if we support. Because doesn't that matter? It's not just whether it can be done. It doesn't how it's done matter.
Right. Because for most people, I hope, even from, and I'm on the fence. I have strong opinion anyway. I
You're on
think,
the fence. That's okay. You don't have to have an opinion.
but I would hope that most people that are definitely like pro capital punishment would, like, I hope the crux for them is whether the person, how much they suffer. And I hope that no one's out there going, we don't care how much they suffer, although I know they exist.
Why does that matter as a Christian? Somebody's going, what do you mean? They made someone else suffer.
The idea of this, yes, he was a murderer. Regardless of whether he deserved to die, he writhed in pain with his lungs spasming for 4 minutes straight before he lost consciousness. I don't know how we as followers of Jesus can support someone going through that kind of pain.
Because theologically, we deserve that too. But Jesus suffered a torturous death on our behalf and took what we deserved on our behalf. Lauren, have you decided?
Have I decided what?
Have you decided what you feel about? And in fact, I think you already decided what you feel about nitrogen gas.
Yeah, I don't like it.
You don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ron, you in? Because you keep wanting to find another way to do it. Like, you'd like
Right.
it if they could be rendered gently unconscious first.
Right.
But you can't do
They
that.
always need that step. Nitrogen by itself, it's the equivalent of, and if you watch much TV or movies, you've probably seen the bad guy comes and put a bag over somebody's head and they're struggling to try to get air. It's the equivalent of that. There's a mask on their face forcing pure nitrogen in. They're not able to get the life-giving oxygen they need. And until they pass out, they're struggling. They're drowning in nitrogen. And that's just cruel.
So you don't, as a follower of Christ, just as a human who thinks, you don't like that.
No.
You don't have to agree with Ron or Daria or Lauren or anybody. You search the scriptures yourself, ask your own friends, do the reading. I did find it kind of interesting. Somebody texted to say, and yet they can use prescriptions and drugs for abortions. True. And we don't like those. So wait a minute. We don't like those, but maybe we just find better drugs to kill people when they're criminals?
Life is full of contradictions and double standards, and I think you'll be happier once you just accept certain facts.
This is why Brian likes Ecclesiastes, because the writer says that. The good die young and the wicked prosper. This isn't fair. It's not right.
Mm-hmm.
This is how life works. And yet I think society looks at us for these things, right? We're so
Yes.
loud about abortion. I don't know, guys. It's a hard one. What do we do about it? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not you voting.
Mm-hmm.
But these things matter to our witness. And believe it or not, somebody's probably going to ask you in your life what you think of this, because there's state lawmakers already talking about bringing this form of execution to Ohio.
Or you're going to have to vote on it.
You're going to, at minimum, you'll have to vote on it with a clear conscience. But you're also probably going to be asked about it in your life at some point. I've had multiple conversations now about this. Everybody asks, oh yeah, I've heard about that. Aren't we obligated to know something about it?
I would hope so.
If we believe that people are created in the image of God and that they deserve not to be tortured, and yeah, there's a lot here.